I've been walking around these meadows for over 60 years. And it's hard to realize when you're young and without any apparent physical limitations, you just climbed all over these places. There isn't a ridge or a cliff here that you see that I haven't been on, been over. I came here to Yosemite in 1916, and I was 14 years old. I came in June 30th, I think it was. I'm so bad for dates. I can't remember yesterday. I can see myself with a particular camera and a particular scene, and see it in great detail, and even smell the air, but I can't tell you what year it was. Everything is telescoped. Oh, I took snapshots then. Remember, I was a pianist. It took quite a while to really get into photography in a big way, but you can't help trying to record what you see. Well, the first good photograph was maybe 1922, 23, maybe even a little before that. But the one serious photograph, and I really knew what I was doing, that is, it sort of visualized the image, was about 1927, April 1927, this big one of the Half Dome, because of the fact that I had by that time had been doing enough thinking. It suddenly occurred to me that I can visualize the image I want, and that if I know my technique and my craft, I can operate the camera and use the right filters, exposure, and development. And out of that whole approach came the zone system in about 15 years. But I see things rather individually. I don't see things differently from you do. I may respond to them differently, and it's in that response. If our eyes are normal, everything really looks the same to everyone. But that a certain thing may have a definite meaning. You would have one reaction to that fossil or to that flower, and my reaction would be different. Therefore, if we were equal in photographic craft, the pictures would have maybe the same quality, but they might have a totally different organization and message and feeling. And that's the thing about photography. It has a vast possibility. I was born in San Francisco, February the 20th, 1902. Well, I can remember as a little kid at the house out here on the sand dunes, nothing but sand and natural shrubbery, great open expanse to the gate, Golden Gate, and for miles around it was sort of wilderness. I could run down to the beach, and This early environment really, I think, shaped my life. I'm wondering often what would happen if I had been born in Detroit or Des Moines or New York, how different the whole environmental background would have been. Perhaps the most memorable single event was the 1906 earthquake. I remember it very clearly. I was 4 years old. It's no cliche now, but my nose was broken by contact with a little stone wall when I was tripped up by an aftershock that morning. And the family doctor said to my mother and father that he advised us to let me grow up, because when I mature, we can do a better job of repairing the septum, you know. And having never matured, the nose is still pointing violently to the left. My father was a very liberal man. He would take me out of school frequently. I guess the principals of the ordinary grammar schools couldn't stand me. And at the time of the San Francisco International Exposition, he took me out of school for a year and gave me a season ticket to the exposition. And of course, that was quite an experience. In fact, I never can forget the first exhibit in San Francisco of avant-garde art that derived from the famous Armory Show in 1913. I never forget the impact these things had on me, although I certainly didn't understand what it was all about. And my grandmother spent the last years of her life trying to associate us with the presidential family with no luck. My wife, Virginia, is extremely camera shy. Well, we married in 1928. We married quite a long time, 52 years. We have 2 children, and we have 5 grandchildren. So the dynasty keeps going along, but I still can't get into the presidential family. This is probably one of the most remarkable meetings of land and ocean. I love to go out here and walk around and just look. I'll get ideas in the back of my mind for pictures, and then sometimes I'll come out and a whole avalanche of photographs takes place. Well, I'd done very little work intentionally for conservation objectives. The first photographs I did were done largely for the love of the subject and the great joy in making the pictures. While my photographs exist in their own right, they have been of considerable use to the conservation movement. This is the northernmost part of the Big Sur coast. And now we're trying to save as much as we can of the southern part all the way down to San Luis Obispo County from overdevelopment. It's just a place with a capital P. And I consider myself very fortunate to live near it. You can see the next cove down the top of the hill. Our house is just behind those trees. I can't verbalize on the internal meaning of pictures whatsoever. Some of my friends can at very mystical levels, but I prefer to say that if I feel something strongly, I would make a photograph that would be the equivalent of what I saw and felt. It's just interesting how you could think of a standard color photograph as automatic camera snapshot of the blue ocean and the rocks and everything, and you'd see something superficially that would be colorful, but it might have no emotional meaning at all. It would have what we call scenery quality. And scenery quality is very different from the natural scene or from the internal scene. It's pompous to say vision, but when I'm ready to make a photograph, I think I quite obviously see in my mind's eye something that is not literally there in the true meaning of the word. I'm interested in expressing something which is built up from within rather than just extracted from without. But there I am trying to verbalize, and it never was very successful. This is very nostalgic. This is my first trip to the valley. I remember climbing up an old rotten stump near our tent, Camp Curry, and the little box brownie #1. And just as I was ready to make the snapshot, the trunk crumbled, and I descended rather precipitously and corkscrew manner to the ground, and on the way down, I apparently snapped the shutter. But then I made another picture and never thought about it until the man the photo finisher worked on the roll and wanted to know how I got this picture of Half Dome upside down on this roll of film. And I think he always thought for years I was just a bit nuts. But it's interesting, we have pictures from Sierra Point. The whole family was up there, all the kids, everybody you can think of. Then had earthquake a little while ago and took out that trail. Looking back over all these years, it's easy to become sentimental. And one of the great tragedies of so many people I know is that when they reach a certain age, they decide that the work is over. But the serious artists, especially the performing artists who are very physically active, and I guess photographers are very physically active too, the interest in the life is so exciting, continuing, that old age simply isn't acceptable. And 60 years had very little difference. Well, of course, you change, but apparently you don't realize your change as much as you should. I suppose I'd note my own change and the ability of the weight of a camera that I carry around, plus the difference in the pictures. Pictures lately, the last 20 years, 30 years, are a little more intense than the ones done 60 years ago. I think that it's been a great experience to watch photography progress and to watch all the young people coming into the field. And I don't think I have anything to say except I would like to consider that my photography and photography in general is really just beginning. After all, photography was presented to the world in about 1839, 1840, and that's 140 years. That's not very long for an art form.
In 1938, in a letter to Ansel Adams, Alfred Stieglitz wrote, "It's good for me to know that there's an Ansel Adams loose somewhere in this world of ours."
I've been a photographer all of my life, and I'd wish to show you the beauty of our planet Earth, both above and below the surface. It's been a journey that has led me to see incredible things within these oceans of our planet. Each one of my photographs has a title: Sea Pearls 1, Santa Cruz Island, 1972. I love photographing clouds as I look up in the late afternoon, imagining those who dance within our clouds. I've traveled all over the world to search for clouds in distant lands, and one of my favorite places is on the Urubamba River in Venezuela, where I can look up to see where clouds are being formed with beauty and majesty and with might as I look up toward the trees of this beautiful country. Trees underwater, the macrocystis, the kelp beds off the Pacific coast of the state of California. Beautiful light indeed. One of my joys also is to photograph in infrared, black and white, just trees, late afternoon. You and I are nothing more than just twigs on a branch of a tree as we go through life. We need to learn who we are and what we can do to preserve our life and the life of others. We need to follow in a pathway of others, as you see here, and find out where that pathway may lead on our planet as we journey on through our lives. This is my signature, Ernie Brooks, and this is a photograph of me. I'm 82 years old, still enjoying photography, still enjoying life at its fullest. And I hope you enjoy the passage for the next few minutes together, you and I. Santa Cruz Island, California. California gold. Looking up toward the day star, our sun, through the beautiful kelp beds. Winged Angel, Santa Barbara Island. Early in my underwater career, she came out of the light directly toward me and made this beautiful pose of a winged angel right in front of my lens, my super white Hasselblad. And then, in the next moment, after a breath on the surface, she returned to be a ballet dancer right in front of my lens. Life is so beautiful, and mammals are so incredible. They seem to know what to do in front of our lens. Sea Pearls 4, a most recent image of mine, showing nature's design at its finest as we pass by. Brown Gorgonian. This photograph was taken in the early 60s, swaying in the currents of the Pacific. Just for you, just for you. I'm in a forest, someplace in Mongolia, looking up toward the sun behind this beautiful, beautiful tree. And in a moment later, as the sun grows brighter, the scene grows wider. Splendid. Learn to work with light and to see what it does in silhouette or behind the object. And don't be afraid to make your exposure of something that is even hard to see with your eye. Compensate it with the right exposure, the right setting, and look at the beauty that comes forward. Fragile Waters has been a journey for me for quite some time. Fragile waters in all parts of the world of our ocean. Oceans are being threatened. These photographs are from many, many years ago when reefs were not endangered by global warming, rising temperatures within our sea. This is the way it was. And for a moment, I wish to take you below with me as we look up to the sun, shining through the surface of the water some 30 feet above. We're turning slowly, looking at the rays of our sun, magnified through the water. One of the most beautiful things that I've ever seen in my life as a human being. Looking up, underwater toward the surface. And while we're looking up, we see the sun and we've seen a moon jellyfish rising from the below toward the sun. A rare sight indeed. And we see man's air bubble rising toward the sun, showing the evidence of man below, our modern world. Frozen in time by photography. Two sisters, California sea lions, 30 feet of water, Santa Barbara Island, 1990, doing what I do, blowing bubbles as I breathe underwater. They're mimicking me. How beautiful. What a memory. And that's what photography can be. Taking the time, early morning light, soft coral in the Philippines, with a diver coming out of early morning sun, reaching for what it is lying below her, with the sun above, just barely breaking the surface of the water in early morning. I hope in your life you have the opportunity to travel to different lands, to cross the oceans, to sail, to feel the magnitude of our great planet, and to look up at all hours of the day and in the evening to see how unique the placement of our planet Earth is in the universe with its very own moon. I love waterfalls of the world, traveling to countries that have these magnificent structures of stone, rising waters and rains flowing out through rivers to our seas. And take the time to enjoy the view and listen to the sound and the thunder and the power as they flow toward their oceans. Cambodia, the Mekong Delta, 2015. Who would have thought a beautiful waterfall could be in that part of the world? Yet it was, right before my lens. Starburst on the surface of water. What beauty. Reflections of our sun. So many reflections. Tranquility. And it all flows with the music that's in the background for you to enjoy. One of my favorite images of all of my life is Spot, Anacapa Island, so many, many, many years ago. Early morning light as she reached toward me with an expression that's timeless. Sea pearls too, macrocystis. Nature is the greatest designer of all. Perfect form, shape. This is the calling card that I use on all of my stationery in the true color of macrocystis kelp, a slight tinge of yellow, green. Always look up. It's a positive thing in your life. I always hate to leave the sea and return to the surface. I love the space that's so liquid around me, but I also love the clouds of our planet Earth that embrace the beautiful forests and the rivers, magnificent trees and clouds, an atmosphere that is incredible, and especially in black and white. And each one of you have a responsibility as one single person, as one single tree in the forest, to come forward and make a difference on our planet, make it a better place, make it better than where you found it, and go on your way. Go in peace, tranquility. Set your margin and set your course. Bless you, and thank you for listening and for viewing.
One of the subjects I love best is sand patterns, or any kind of patterns in the natural landscape. The patterns represent a sort of harmony within the world. There's an interaction of the elements, and they feel like little perfections. I'm Dorothy Kerper Monnelly. I'm a fine art photographer focusing on the wild natural landscape. I think I got seriously interested in darkroom work and landscape work when I was in my late 20s. I think probably for the last 35 years or more, I've been working with this large format black and white with a big 4x5 negative. And I'm lucky enough to live right in the middle of the Great Marsh here in Massachusetts, and I actually have done a whole book of black and white landscapes on this same subject. And what's critical in printing is to somehow, it's white on white, if you look at it closely, to try to retain all these details of white on white so that you can see you can feel the power of the wind, and yet you don't lose this wonderful, strong composition created by the black and the white together. I used Ansel Adams' zone system. I studied it and learned it and used it. I'm immensely grateful to him for the work that he did, the pioneering that he did really to help people get into the experience of working with a black and white camera and working with a large format. The reason I wanted to show this to you is because it's a source of one of my favorite pictures, which is ice patterns. And there's some wonderful patterns on the pond here in the winter, especially when there's a light snow and the wind just blows and sweeps the snow across the black ice, making a sort of a statement of the combination of the wind and the water and the elements. Any of us that are landscape photographers search for subjects, search for a place that excites us and gives us a sense of beauty. The Great Marsh in particular has enormous beauty because of the wonderful variety. It's always different. I go and look at it every day. It's like my best friend, and I want to see its face, and it's constantly surprising me. I love form and shape, and these islands can add a lot of drama. Here's a photograph that I took very early in the morning. Is that same pairing of two islands with the sun just coming up over the one on the left. I just love the forms, the beautiful forms that are revealed and reflected in the stillness of the full tide. You see more, you experience more if you have a relationship with a landscape. Fits very beautifully with stewardship of the land and an understanding of the land and a desire to somehow communicate those values. Fragile means precious, something that is irreplaceable, but it also implies that we don't want to break it. We need to take care in how we interact with this particular landscape. A real role of the photographer is to somehow communicate in a different way, in a nonverbal way, how unbelievable this place is, and people can interpret it however they wish. They can see that it's valuable. If they're scientists and they're naturalists, they'll understand what's really happening and all of the wildlife that depend on this, and so much of our own culture that depends on protecting these areas and keeping them as pristine as we can. My goal in all of this is to communicate the experience that I have in the landscape. There's the moon. You see it? Right there.